Your relationship sucks? Okay, we're done talking about her. Your finances aren't where you want them to be? Okay, we're not going to talk about your income producing activities. What are you not doing that you said you were going to do? What are you doing that you know you need to stop doing? Let's focus on that.
Discipline is just doing what you know you should do, whether you feel like it or not.
They know what they need to do, they're just not doing it. I believe that any man should do his best to become the type of man that can take on as much responsibility as possible.
Welcome, Nick. Glad to have you here, finally. I know we've been discussing this for a while now. We actually met, where did we meet? At the gym a few years ago. I think not too long ago, 2 years ago or a year and a half, I think.
Yeah, the meeting place, man.
Yeah.
Yep.
And since then, we followed each other, etc.
Yep.
I know you're a high-performance coach. You've been doing this for many, many years. So for the people listening to us right now, could you quickly introduce what you do as a high-performance coach and a little bit about your journey, and just if you could share your story a little bit?
Yeah. So I've met more incredible people at the gym than probably anywhere else. And moving to Estonia 8 years ago, my wife, who told me Estonians don't do small talk, and they don't like kind of new people, no new friends was the mindset. So I embraced that, and I stopped talking to people, which is so far from who I am every single day in my life. Because what I learned in, let's say, 2008, 2009, when I was transitioning from sports into the real world, was I learned how to talk to people through sales, through door-to-door sales. Yeah. And it was the first time in my life where I made a little bit of money. I got rejected a ton. I grew, but I learned that being willing to talk to other people, having the ability to sell, was something that I was going to do for the rest of my life. So when I was selling security systems door to door back in 2007, I'll never forget this. It's the value of meeting new people. It's the value of not allowing your external environment to dictate how you show up, right? Because that's what we do sometimes, right? We move to a new country, we're out of our comfort zone. You know, me moving from the US to Estonia, culture shock. Me playing professional baseball and then selling security systems door to door, getting rejected door after door. These are external circumstances that could very easily change the way that I showed up. And what I've learned through that experience, which was close to 20 years ago, is the same thing I learned here. Like the person that we show up as every single day is more important than the external environment that we're in. Okay. Yeah. And I learned that personally time and time again in my life, but that is ultimately what I help my clients do. What I always say to people when they ask what I do is I build people from the inside out. I teach my clients how to control their experience externally by influencing themselves internally. And that's what I've done for the last 10 to 15 years. But yeah, man, that's kind of in a nutshell what I do. And we can dive in and we could talk a little bit more about that, how that shows up. But that's it, man.
Mm-hmm. And so you mainly help high-performing people, I mean, entrepreneurs, professionals, to perform at a higher level, to have a better mindset, first internally, but then that would reflect externally in their outcomes, financially, socially, spiritually, in different aspects of their lives. That's what you help them with mainly, like the mindset, all of that, right?
Well, you know, yeah, they're high performers. They're successful in one or two areas of their life because of the places I'm in, the situations I put myself in. I'm generally just around more successful people. Yeah. But what I found is their success is often the thing that's really standing in the way of ultimately what they come to me for, right? Mm. So they might be financially successful, but they feel bankrupt in their relationships. They might be in a great relationship in the beginning, but they completely lose themselves through that relationship. So they start to take their foot off the gas professionally. They stop going to the gym, taking care of themselves. Mm. So success, somebody said this a long time ago. I can't recall who it was. It was a Tony Robbins audio I was listening to in my car back in like 2006. And I wish I could think of the guy's name, but he told a story about this French restaurant that he used to go to. And in the beginning, it was incredible. The service was perfect. It was a new restaurant, and they were just packed, line out the door. And then after 2 or 3 years, the service wasn't so good, and they didn't do those little things. And the line was a little bit shorter because not so many people were going there. And he said, nothing fails like success. That's what he said. And I think that's the case for a lot of the guys that are attracted to somebody like me that is selling intangible things largely. Like, some people call it mindset. The word performance comes up. But ultimately, they're just searching for more meaning and purpose internally. And their success oftentimes is a thing that interferes with them proactively going and getting help, the help that I offer. So generally, they just finally realize that something's broken, whether it's the relationship fails, their finances were good and then they're bad. That's the thing that wakes these guys up. So yeah, those are the people that I work with. They've had a lot of success, but then once that success is not what they thought it would be, it's no longer feeling like success. They're not getting the same type of results. That's when they are ready to come and talk to somebody like me to help them. Yeah.
That's a big one. That's a big one I've seen in dating too. A lot of guys are very successful in their careers or their business.
Yeah.
But that's a double-edged sword because, they start investing all their time into their work. They become consumed by their work.
Sure.
And they don't make any time or effort in their dating lives. And so that ripples through in the fact that they start losing confidence in themselves. They start losing obviously dating is a very important area as a guy. And so if you don't have that area handled in some way, you start questioning yourself, you start losing a bit of confidence, and that ripples through in other areas. And so a lot of guys who come to me for dating advice, it's usually entrepreneurs who they have money, but that money kind of gets in their head and they stop making the efforts that initially made them successful. They start like, instead of pressing the gas, they put on the brakes and they stop making the efforts.
Interesting.
And that really slows them down in every area. But in any case, I wanted to ask you, because coming back to you again, I know you're like a professional baseball player.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And so how many years did you play as a baseball player?
So I played at the highest division, the highest level of collegiate sports, amateur sports is Division I. It's 4 years of that. And then I signed after my senior year and played for 1 season professionally. And the writing was on the wall that I'm done. I knew that I wasn't going to reach the big leagues. So I got a taste of the professional sports, check that box. I got a baseball card I can show my daughters one day, which is cool. Yeah. I can say that I made it to the professional level. But the truth is, man, I was excited to transition. I was ready for the next chapter of my life. Now, that was both innocent and arrogant all at the same time. I had no idea what was coming down the pipe as I transitioned from sports into the real world. So it was innocent, but I was also excited about it because I didn't know what to expect. And I had a lot of arrogance, man. I was just used to having success come pretty naturally and easily, which I want to go back a second because my experience with dating, even up until I met my wife, was very passive. And I think a lot of guys fall into this. Maybe you've seen this. I know I was that guy that I would never approach girls. Girls would approach me.
You'd be the chosen one.
Yeah, basically. And I was so used to that when I'd get into an environment, let's say with some friends, my friends group, 4 or 5 guys, a couple of them had girlfriends, and there were 2 or 3 of us that were single. Whatever girls would come with the girlfriends of my friends would inevitably be the ones that I would talk to. Yeah. So I was never choosing who I spoke to in relationships. I was kind of just taking what was available or that was coming to me. Yep. And that made me passive. And that turned into a lot of relationships that I hadn't chosen, that I went into as if I had chosen them. And that's what I learned about dating. And I thankfully made that shift before I met my wife. I realized that. Like, I was so passive when it came to dating, and even some other areas of my life, that the relationship really didn't have the foundation that it could or should have from the onset. And most of every one of those, frankly, relationships ended. I don't know if you see that with guys, that they're the chosen one, so they're
A
not
lot of
proactive.
them, yeah, definitely. A lot of them, because a lot of them also have this delusion that, there's like a soulmate for them that's going to come at some point, and, like, oh, just be yourself, and the right one for you is going to just come by herself.
Yeah.
And that's a delusion. I think in today's day and age, if you're not proactive, the world is a very competitive place with dating apps, with social media, etc. Why would she choose you over another one? If she could choose you, obviously, if you're a great option, etc. You could just focus on yourself and she could choose you, but you don't want to just rely on that. You want to have options. You want to be able to just pick the right one out of abundance. And I think a lot of guys, that type of mindset of like, oh, I'm just gonna wait for the one, or I'm just gonna just be myself, and the right girl is gonna come. That mindset just limits a lot of guys, and it puts them in scarcity.
Yeah.
Because then when they end up actually getting that girl, then they start acting in very needy ways, and they start subconsciously sabotaging the relationship because they never had those initial reference experiences that would make them more discerning and more capable of handling the relationship properly. So I think, yeah, it's there's a lot of different things, but definitely, and I can recognize myself too in that. I mean,
Yeah.
I was the chosen one for most of my life. I mean,
Okay.
since till college, and
Yeah.
then through action and through being aware, because the first step of solving a problem is being aware of it. And me and you, we got aware of it. You before your marriage, and me, when I was in college, I told you my story. It's my first year in college, I didn't get late at all because I would just. I'm not gonna tell my story here. We'll talk about it later. But yeah, me too. I can recognize myself in what you're saying here.
Yeah.
But I wanted to come back to the baseball thing
Yeah.
first,
Sure.
because obviously that identity as an athlete kind of shaped you in some way. Did that identity as an athlete shape how you coach guys now, and how you run your business now, and your mindset? Or
Yeah. I mean, the perspective you get as an athlete is a transferable skill set. Just the perspective alone, right? That nothing is given, everything is earned. You're replaceable. Nobody's gonna make you the like the chosen one. You have to figure out a way to do that on your own.
Yeah.
And even if you do execute all of the things that you can control, there's no promise that you're ever going to get to the level or achieve the thing that you want. So it's a really good example of how the real world works. Now, I didn't realize that while I was playing, and I certainly didn't understand how to transfer those skills or those lessons directly after leaving sports. Like, I have that perspective now, having 20 years of life experience, so I can see that. But yeah, man, I mean, competitiveness, resilience, hard work ethic, all of those things show up in everything that I do now. Those were certainly a part of being an athlete. Mm-hmm. But I think the biggest thing that I've learned that relates to what I do now in terms of identity is that, sports is what we do. It's not who we are. And the same thing is true with being in a marriage. Yes, I am married, but that's not who I am. Or yes, I am an entrepreneur, but that's not who I am. These are things that I'm choosing to do. And what I ultimately teach my clients is to detach from these external titles, these external labels, and really commit to, the who they're being, not even how they're doing it or what they're doing. It's who am I being, and really getting connected with that and aligning with that. And so, yeah, I learned a lot of that through my struggle transitioning from sports, because it was about identity. It was about being too attached to the title, to the label, and all the things that came with it: status, connection, certainty, even it's certainly adventure, growth, contribution, like all the things that we need, all of the basic human needs, and even some of the spiritual needs that we all have. I got that from sports. So it was very difficult to walk away from that, because I experienced that at a very, very high level. And so, it's a part of everything that I do: sports, identity, all of it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I like the idea that you mentioned about detaching yourself from the labels. I think that's a big one. I think
Yeah.
the main thing limiting most guys in the way they perform is the labels they put on themselves in many ways, like
Sure.
their self-image, their identity. There's a great book. I'm sure maybe you know that book. I think it's called Psycho-Cybernetics
Yeah,
by
Maxwell Maltz.
yeah.
Yeah, great book.
It's a great book, and he teaches you that your self-image really affects your actions, obviously,
Yep.
and that through you changing your self-image, you could definitely change how you act and how your life goes. And so, is it part of the work you do with your clients? Is like really removing their labels and reshaping their identity? That's also what you do.
Well, you talk about self-image, self-love, self-care. All of these things are fundamental to the process that I do. For example, waking up earlier in the morning. What I do with all my clients is, what's the earliest you've woken up? What's the earliest you've woken up?
Man, I was about to tell you, I struggle with that, man. I wake up pretty late because I sleep pretty late, and yeah,
So give me ballpark average. Like, when do you typically wake up?
10 a.m.
Okay, 10 a.m. So you're probably going to bed late as well.
Yeah, I go to bed 2, 3.
Okay, yeah. So what I say is back your wake up time down like 90 minutes minimum, straight out the gate. Don't worry or focus on changing anything else.
Yeah.
In the beginning, don't even worry about what you're going to do, but just back it down and commit to it and do it no matter what. After a week or two, I'll have guys tell me that they're having like a spiritual experience in the morning. Because what are we doing when we overcome that self-limiting belief that we've told ourselves, so many of us, that I'm not a morning person? I'm a night owl. And then you disprove the story, the narrative that you've been telling yourself so long by doing something when it's hard, when you don't even necessarily have to or need to, when nobody's watching. You start to restore some of that self-belief. Like, wow, I can overcome this story. I can do things that are hard, that when nobody's watching, that nobody's really requiring me to do.
Yeah.
When a man who's been letting those things fall, who's been dropping that ball, negotiating with himself, not keeping promises he makes to other people or himself, when he starts to do this, after a week and a half, 2 weeks, that self-esteem starts to come back in. That self-confidence starts to come back in. Like, wait, I'm in control here. And so that's a real simple example, man, of how powerful restoring some of that self-esteem is. And as Maxwell Maltz talks about in the book, that your self-perception really is what's driving your behavior. So if you're the sort of person that doesn't think highly of yourself, your actions are going to support that. And certainly your interactions with other people. And the way that I like to think of integrity, which is a buzzword for most guys, certainly the guys that want to work with me, they'll come in and tell me, hey, integrity is important to me. That's probably one of my leading values. But then they're so out of integrity in so many areas of their life that are even easy for them to identify. But the real area that they're out of integrity is that they're not keeping their promises to themselves. And that's the alignment that has the biggest impact across all areas. That's what really changed behavior. So we don't focus on the external stuff. Like, your relationship sucks. Okay, we're done talking about her. Your finances aren't where you want them to be. Okay, we're not going to talk about your income producing activities. What are you not doing that you said you were going to do to yourself?
Yeah.
What are you doing that you know you need to stop doing? Let's focus on that. And then once we get some of that alignment and integrity with self, that starts to change a lot of the perception, the view of the external environment. That starts to change behavior. And it's like clockwork, man. Like, it's just so predictable for the type of guys that I work with. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, what would you say is that you found over the years? What would you say is the best like morning routine that have worked for you and your clients that really leads to tangible results in every area? What would be the best morning routine or process that you would recommend your clients?
Well, the best one is the one that you do. The best one is the one that you stick with and that you're committed to. So what is commitment? I look at commitment. The difference between commitment and interest or curiosity comes down to how you make decisions and choices, okay? Or make choices. A decision is, I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning at 4:30. And when you wake up at 4:30, when the alarm goes off, it's not a choice. There's no choice there because the decision's already made. So how you feel, how much sleep you got, when you went to bed, if you argued with your spouse or your girlfriend or not, if the dog barked if an hour before, none of that matters because you've already decided. So the problem is most people, they're making choices in areas of their life where they need to be more decisive. So in any area of life where you know that there's something that is important for you to do, I say this is a decision moment. You just are in or out. And then once you decide, then you're not going to have to make that choice anymore.
Yeah.
Because the decision's already been made. So that's how I look at morning routines. It's about what are you going to do consistently, and back it down to the most simple executable commitment or decision that you can make.
Yeah.
And then from there, you can make some choices within that. And the choices could be, first, I'm going to meditate. Then I'm going to get into scripture. For me, that's important. Then I'm going to get into planning top 3 priorities for the day. Then I'm going to get to the gym. Those are all choices that you can make within that decision. But until you decide that you're going to get up in the morning at a certain time and the decision's made, then you're not going to do it consistently. So it makes no sense. There's no point to it.
I heard that the word decision comes from incision, like cutting things out.
I like that.
I like that too, because a lot of times it's about just removing the things or cutting down the things that are hindering you. Less is more. It's just like stop doing the things that are harming you, and already you're going to be a lot better. So, for example, instead of like the decision to wake up early, what would make it easier? It would be to cut, for example, stop, looking at social media before sleep or whatever. Those type of things, like cutting the things that would hinder that. But anyways, you have an academy, right? You have the Academy of Maximized Performance, right? That's the academy through which you help your clients, improve and all of that. What would you say are the most common negative tendencies that your clients go through, and how do you help them overcome those? Do you have any like recent examples or things you help them overcome?
Yeah, we've been touching on it.
Yeah, we've touched on it a little bit.
The most common frustration that my clients come to me with is that they know what they need to do, they're just not doing it, or they used to do it more, and they're not doing it now because they had a kid. Going to the gym is just an easy example for most people to relate to. Man, I used to be in such good shape, and I know I can get back there, but I've had this kid, or I just got married, and that becomes the excuse. But they know they need to be in the gym. They know that they want to be in shape, but they're just not doing it. So that's one of the biggest frustrations that they are aware of.
So not sticking to their words, basically.
Yeah, but that's ultimately what they're doing, but they don't know that. And so that's actually what people need to understand, that it's not that you're just not doing the thing. Every time you say you're going to do something to yourself or others, it's like you have this internal scoreboard, or bank account's a better example. When you keep your word, that's a deposit in a self-esteem, self-confidence bank account. Mm-hmm. And the more you make those deposits, the more your confidence becomes unconditional, meaning it doesn't matter what the response is from anybody in the world. It doesn't matter the room you walk into. You rely less and less on those things because you have internal alignment, congruence, integrity. So you make these deposits daily by keeping your word. But what most people do is they drop their word, especially to the people in their lives, their spouse, their children, and all of these things are withdrawals from that account. But the biggest withdrawal, when people get in overdraft, I've been in overdraft before. I don't know about you, bro, where, overdraft fees, all that. I've lived that life. There's nothing more frustrating than having an overdraft fee hit your account, time and time. Just think about that. People can relate to that. But that's happening when you drop your promises to yourself. Attach those two things. When you say you're going to do something to yourself, when you make a commitment that you're going to go out and you're not going to drink this time, or you're not going to go to the after party, you're going to go out, you're going to have a good time, but you're just not going to go to the after party. Whatever it is you're telling yourself, every time you don't keep your word to yourself, it's not that you just went to the after party. It's not that you just had the extra drink. It's that you're taking withdrawals out of that self-confidence, self-esteem bank account, man. And that's what people aren't aware that they're doing. So what does that perpetuate? It just makes you more susceptible to the distractions, the temptations, the low-level energy that is everywhere in the world, trying to keep you mediocre, average. And so that misalignment is where people get distracted. They forget who they are. They lose who they are. They lose that spark. They lose that little thing that you see in people. When you see it, you see somebody that's got it. You're like, damn, I want some of that. I don't know what they have, but I want it. What you're seeing in that person is congruence, is alignment. They have that energy about them. And to me, this is where it comes from, man. This is the life force that we all have access to. Most people just have no idea how or what they're even trying to access, right?
True. Yeah, and I love that analogy of the bank account, the deposits, the withdrawals in your self-esteem, etc. I see it all the time with my clients too. Whenever they say they're going to approach a girl, but they don't, you can see a tiny little drop of their self-esteem go down because they know they should have done it, but they haven't done it.
That's right.
And discipline is just doing what you know you should do, whether you feel like it or not.
Yeah.
And just doing it.
Yeah.
I was reading, that book, Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Yeah.
And he says that every action you take is a vote for the type of person you're becoming. Every single day you're voting.
I like that.
Every action is a vote, basically, for your future.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a really great analogy. So I want to ask you this, Nick. So, I mean, obviously, you're a high-performance coach. You're training men all day, etc. You're helping them.
Yeah.
And you're also a parent. I mean, you have 2 daughters. Now you're a dad, etc. So how has your work influenced how you raise your children? And especially in the context of being a single dad, how do you balance that? And I just wanted to ask you that.
Yeah. Well, it gets in the way sometimes because in my relationship and then also with my kids, because I got to turn off coaching mode. No, look, I think being a parent, part of our job is just to let these little spirits having a human experience, which is what I believe, be who they're going to be and try to remove as many of the obstacles for that to happen. But as a coach, man, I'm constantly trying to control this little 4-year-old, what she does. And you love your kids. You want obviously the best for them and you do your best and all those things that most parents are thinking about. But what I've learned from coaching other people and helping them is it's more about asking them questions and getting them to arrive at some of their own conclusions, to not impart my agenda on any one conversation. Let it do what it's going to do and be informed by what I'm seeing and what I'm experiencing. And that kind of informs how I parent, man. Like I, with my daughter, was in the car the other day and she just seemed like different, down maybe. Okay. She's in the back seat, my 4-year-old. Normally she's singing along, doing whatever, but she was just really quiet. Her head was down. And so I started to try to change the song to get her to pipe up or whatever. And it's just doing things to try to get her out of this mood. And I caught myself and I just said, just maybe she needs a minute. I just turned the music off. And that for me was a win for me. Like, I don't need to influence her emotions all the time. Sometimes I just need to let her do what she needs to do in the moment. And I just, in my mind, I was like, that's a win for me. Now, do I know, is that in a book? I don't know. But for me, the more we can allow these kids to experience life and not try to control and influence so much of that experience in the given moment, I think that the kids are going to become who they're supposed to become if that's the overall experience that they have with us. Yeah, man.
So the answer is knowing when to let go and just let the chips fall where they may, and then you just adjust depending on.
Yeah, man. And look, what does that require? Well, it's the same thing in relationships, I think, and I also think it's the same thing in maintaining your own internal state. It's doing what you need to do to feel what you need to feel and experience, to not be in debt or insufficient in any area that's important personally for you. And then when you show up into these environments to be there for other people, spouse, kids, friends, whatever, you don't necessarily need anything from them. So then you can show up for them and you can just be present. And hopefully you can overflow some of these feelings that you're already feeling internally, peace, joy, happiness, whatever. But ultimately you don't need anything from them. So that that allows us to just be present and not try to impart our own stuff onto them or take, you know?
It's a great answer. And do you think that every man should have kids? And what would be the ideal age for a guy to have kids based on your experience?
Look, I've met a lot of guys that I'd be like, man, maybe wait a few years. If the 24-year-old Nick, I'm glad waited till he was 34. But I believe everyone should experience being a father. Every man should experience being a father. It's the most incredible thing. And I believe that any man should do his best to become the type of man that can take on as much responsibility as possible. Because the more responsibility you take on, the more you're confronted. And ultimately, from my belief system, I think the ultimate success story is becoming a version of ourselves that is the best version of ourselves that we could become. Right? Imagine on that day of judgment, a lot of people talk about the worst case scenario is not heaven or hell. It's being at the pearly gates and being introduced to the person you were supposed to be. And seeing the difference, the disparity between who you became and who you were supposed to be. And so I think kids are a great way to help us become more of that person. Without kids, I don't know that it would be possible from my belief system. There's something missing there. Something missing. My uncle, he's 50 years old, very successful attorney in the U.S., decided he wasn't going to have kids. He had a very successful career, went through a divorce, tough situation, woke him up and said, I want to have kids. He just had his first daughter at 53 years old, and he would confirm exactly what I'm telling you. He's like, I've achieved everything in the world you can achieve. He was a Division I football player, every degree a man could have, successful financially. He's experienced a lot of incredible things in his life. He's overcome a lot of adversity. He's lived a full life. Nothing compares to having that kid, he says. I believe that. Anybody that I've met that's successful, that has a child finally, after building some of those things, would agree. It's just, it's a beautiful thing. Age doesn't matter. It will give you what you need at that time. I don't think there's any wrong age to have a kid. I think that if you can be somewhat in control of when you have a child, do it with a partner that you want to raise the kids with, and be in a place where you can make a good decision on that. Because if that doesn't work out, it's going to complicate things, but it's not going to interfere with your ability to be a great parent either. And I'm learning that now as I go through a divorce, which I never thought I'd be going through. One of the things that helped me walk away from my marriage was understanding that I can still be the father that I want to be, that I intend to be, even if I'm not living that out in the way that I envisioned it. You know, it's like, we make plans. God laughs, like, all right, this isn't going to look the way I wanted, but I can still be this father. So I wouldn't say there's any right or wrong age, even if you accidentally get a girl pregnant, take that responsibility to help you become a better man. Use it. Don't let it use you. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Interesting. So no abortion if you wouldn't recommend if it's the wrong women that you didn't want to be with.
Look, I would have told you that I don't believe in abortion until having my second daughter and with my wife, who at the time we were talking about separation and divorce. And that was on the table. And it would have been so far from who her and I are. It would have been so far from what we believe. But it was something that we considered. So although I don't believe in abortion, I know that life happens sometimes. And when things don't look the way you want, it can be scary and it can make you feel uncertain about the future that you want to create.
Yep.
But like, I'm not going to tell anybody. I don't think that's a decision that I would ever forgive myself for personally. Yeah.
And do you think guys should wait to have a certain financial situation before having kids? For example, getting to that million mark?
No, fuck no. No, because Because look, money's not ultimately what you need or they need. You know, you have to be so much more than just the guy that makes the money. And frankly, look, if you're the type of guy that can make $1 million, then long before you made that $1 million, you became the type of person that could make $1 million, which to me is more important than the $1 million. All right. So just because you make $1 million though, or you're the type of person that can, doesn't mean you're going to be a good parent, a reliable partner. You know, there's so many more dimensions to being a well-rounded human being and having a well-rounded experience in life. I would say the thing to shoot for is clarity. Clarity. What do you want? Who are you committed to being and becoming? And can you articulate that to a partner? And if you can, then the money will likely come if that's how you live. And especially if you find a partner that's on board for that. And that's ultimately what you want. You want a partner that's going to come along the ride for you. And I would say to any man that if you're coming on the ride with another woman, then that's a problem, because that's going to create more issues down the road than having a child prematurely before you're financially ready. You know, I just don't believe that any man should be putting his purpose in somebody else's vision, especially a woman's.
Yeah.
That to me is where a lot of women lose respect for their partner. Yeah. That masculine feminine polarity that most guys really want and yearn for in a relationship. It's almost impossible if you're following her vision. So get clear on what you want, be able to articulate that, and then be bold enough to do that with somebody you're interested in. And if you have children with that individual, then you're at least set up to be able to build and create the financial resource that we need to raise kids, and it's expensive. And so those things are more important than the dollar amount you have in the bank.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. I like the fact that you said that, yeah, you become that type of person, the person, for example, who makes $1 million long before you had that $1 million in your bank account.
That's right.
But then also, I think you need a baseline a little bit these days, because like obviously it costs money to raise kids, etc. You need to have a certain financial comfort, a little bit.
Well, look, I've just seen so many situations that, you know, in my language, God used to create good things. So I've seen guys get pregnant in the middle of their sports career, and it's like it just derails their dreams. I mean, here they are thinking they're going to play college sports and they get a girl pregnant or whatever. I've seen that happen time and time again, but I know a few guys that were like that have the best marriage of a handful of friends that I know, or their kids are thriving now in high school or college. Like they had kids 20, 21 years ago. I couldn't imagine having a kid at that time. They couldn't either, but it turned out fine. And so I wouldn't be so concerned about that stuff if I was a younger man. What I would be really focused on is building the man that I admire in every single way and committing to that. And then if you are going to bring a woman into the picture, making sure that she's on board with what you're building and who you're becoming, making sure that she can buy into that vision and that direction, and then build a life together, you know? And make no mistake, the statistics prove that a committed man in a monogamous relationship is going to make a lot more money, a lot faster than anything else. You know, why do you think so many successful millionaires,
even billionaires,
have been married 2-3 times? Yeah. They might not be great at marriage, but they're still married. Like there's a reason why successful people are married. And it's like, okay, what came first, the success or the marriage? I don't care. I just think it's an ingredient of success. Just think about the distractions. I mean, my God, I'm single again at 43. I turned 43 in a few days. I'm not there yet. But looking at even just getting back into the dating market, what you guys are all dealing with out here with dating apps and just all of the things that are now public knowledge about how girls are moving and how guys are moving in terms of game, and like all these there's so many things to consider. It's a lot of energy. It's a lot of energy that's not going to building business, a lot of energy that's not going to any type of creation that you might have an inspiration to do, whatever. So it's like, it's a little easier when you just have one and you know, it's my girl, and you don't have to worry about all this shit, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree to some extent, but then the paradox is that if you don't take the time to grow these skills in the first place before having that partner, then it's going to have ripple effects in the future where, as we talked about before, like sometimes a lot of guys have been focused all their lives on their careers, And then out of scarcity or out of the feeling the need that they need to find a partner, they do find one. But because they didn't really go through the growth and the challenge of becoming a chooser, like actually having options, there's a part of their identity that starts either sabotaging the relationship, or they didn't really build the character traits, or they didn't have the right they didn't have the skills to retain her long term, basically, in a way.
That's right, man.
So
yeah, look, I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah,
I really do, because the skills that we're talking about don't require a woman, and that's the you can learn these skills and develop these skills through approaching women. You absolutely can. Like what from what I understand you teach is overcoming limiting beliefs, overcoming a story and a narrative. Like certainly confidence, social skills, all of that. But ultimately, it's about proving to yourself that you can do hard things, you know, and seeing something that you want and having the courage, the commitment and discipline to go get it. Those things can all be learned by approaching women. And those are important skills to have developed before you take on a serious relationship. I absolutely agree with that. I think that that's a very high level of thinking. Like most guys are just attached to getting the hot girl. You know, they think that's the thing that's the most important. It's like, no, man, it's being able to get her and keep her. You know, that's a skill set that whether the girl stays or not is transferable into so many different areas of your life that are going to be very, very fulfilling if you execute those skill sets, if you use those skill sets throughout your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the world is changing super fast now, as we said, with social media, dating apps, the internet, etc. So what do you think men need to do today to kind of stay ahead in tomorrow's world and adapt, etc., in your opinion, if you had to give advice to guys in their 20s, 30s, younger than you, what would you do in today's world to adapt to tomorrow's world?
Master the foundational stuff. A lot of people say take care of your house, get your house in order. But the further we get away from this face-to-face interaction, the further we get away from our own ability to create for the sake of creating, because so many influences are coming in at all times, we complicate things. Like foundational truths are universal. Like take care of your health, have integrity, like keep your word. These are simple foundational things. Have a vision, have goals, and then work towards those goals every day. Everybody can tell you that that's what you need to be successful, but how few people are doing that. And even the most successful people that come to me and that I work with have gotten away from those things. They get away from the foundational stuff. So as the world gets more and more distracting, as the world gets smaller and smaller because we have access, your ability to focus, your ability to master the foundational basics, and your ability to create with, not for the sake of popularity, influence, but being that person that creates because, no, this is what I want to create in the world. This is who I want to be in the world. This is how I want to show up. Authenticity is the word that a lot of people use. But the way the world is going, artificial intelligence, global economy, global access, whatever, authenticity, creativity, creative authenticity, and people that master the basics, they're going to dominate into the future. AI can't replace that. It just can't be replaced. So authentic personalities, people will always stand out. They do to this day, they always have, and they will well into the future. So, yeah, it's you said something earlier about removing things. I talk to my clients a lot about addition by subtraction.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's just everything is built to distract you, and that's only increasing. So the people that can focus are going to dominate in the future. Yeah. But channel that focus into creative works, into creating the experience. And yeah, you can write your ticket because, well, most people aren't doing that. 98% of people are just consume, distracted, sedating,
Yep.
all of these things. So yeah, that's the hack.
Yeah, you got to become a producer. Also, yeah, building a personal brand, I think, is a very, very powerful move in the next few. I mean, if you the best time to start was, a few years ago, but the second best time is today. Like I think
right.
building a personal brand is super powerful because, as you said, people now relate to that authenticity to people, and you can't replace that with AI, like an actual person.
That's right.
So I think, yeah. I wanted to ask you also, are there any, books or tools or mentors that had profoundly impacted your journey so far, and things you would recommend to younger people or guys listening to this?
One of the most impactful books was Unbroken, the story of Louis Zamperini. It's actually a biography of a World War II prisoner of war who went down somewhere in the Pacific, overcame this incredible journey at sea, and then arrived at the shores of Japan and became a POW. Like imagine you overcome this incredible journey at sea. It's like the odds of surviving that, and then you arrive at the shores of your enemy and they take you as a captive. They've made a movie about it. I encourage everybody to read the book. But the reason why I bring that up is it's not a personal development book. I could give you 10 examples of personal development books. We mentioned Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. That is, to me, source content. A lot of books are derivatives of what they learned in a book like Psycho-Cybernetics. But the power of a good biography, autobiography, like the Louis Zamperini story in Unbroken, is that you innately understand that what he was being was resilient. What he was being was positive in a very negative situation. You get to actually see these principles that we learn through personal development played out in action. So it's really powerful. And most of the people that are watching this are personal development people. They're into learning from others. So you probably have a bookcase full of books that you're not really using the principles. What you need is access to the people that are living that out. That's why I believe in biographies for people that consume a lot of, or autobiographies for people that consume a lot of personal development content. Because most of the time they're not able to understand how to receive what they're reading. Perfect example for me, another personal development book that's a good one. You mentioned it one of the first times we've met, or the couple times that we've met. Tim Ferriss, 4-Hour Workweek.
Yep.
It's all about automation, delegation. Now, when I read that book, I was on the heels of transitioning out of sports, didn't know how to work hard, didn't know what it was going to take to be successful professionally. So what I heard in that book was delegate and never have to do anything I don't want to do. Completely wrong message to receive from that book.
Yeah.
Like completely wrong. So the point is, sometimes we read these personal development books and we're not a vessel that can receive the message. We don't understand yet how we can apply this content into our life. So that's why you need to get around real life examples of people personifying those principles. Now you can do that through podcasts. You can do that through networking, going to events like your events, getting coaching. These are the types of things. Watch the people that are displaying those behaviors. That's what helps you integrate it into your life. You need to see how to do it, how to execute it.
Yeah. I read once that the best way to learn from people is through osmosis, through because we all have mirror neurons, basically.
Yeah.
And when it's very different to learn from someone, like from reading a book, than to hang out, for example, with you and be like seeing how you act in
That's
real
right.
life, in real time, because that's how we best learn, from osmosis, basically, because we have just mirror neurons that pick up on
Yeah, man.
other people's behaviors.
And think about your kid. You know, this is true for kids too. You know, they're watching what you do. They're not watching what you say.
Leading by example.
That's right. And so, yeah, that's everybody's got books, man. Like, you know, book summaries is a big thing with ChatGPT now. Like, I use an app called Headspace.
Yeah, that's for meditation.
No, it's actually, or maybe I called it the wrong thing. Let me just pull it up. Headway.
Okay, headway.
It's just summaries of books. So I'm committed to one summary a day. It's like 10, 15 minutes, and it reads the summary to you, and you get the basics. That to me is an effective way of actually reading these days. Why? Because most books are derivatives, if you ask me. If you are going to read, I encourage anybody to get as close as you can to source content as possible. Who taught the author? Who's the author's mentor? And once you start doing that, you're like, wow, like there's 3, 4 derivatives and you could trace it back to the source content. And I love that. I like that originality. Like I like psychocybernetics because the principles being taught were being taught and are certainly relevant and applicable in the 60s. Same thing is true with Think and Grow Rich. That book was written decades ago, still very relevant. So the closer you get to source content, you get the benefit and the luxury of seeing how that advice has been relevant throughout decades. And if you can take advice that's been relevant throughout decades, you can pretty much predict that it's going to be relevant in the future.
Yeah.
Decades in the past, you can extrapolate. And those are good things to implement in your life. You can have a lot of confidence that those principles are going to help you get to where you want to go.
Yeah, I like that. Reading the classics, getting to the source basically of things, old knowledge, old things. I like that. Now, let me ask you this. If you had 30 seconds left to live, okay, and let's say you had your children sitting next to you on your deathbed, what would you say are the 3 most important things you learned on how to live a happy and successful life? What would you tell them?
Well, I would honestly say that if you haven't learned the 3 most important things by watching how I've lived, then I've failed. Because I think that people treat their life like, let's say an athlete treats a sport. A lot of people treat their life like every day's game day, right? And so there's a lot of pressure. But really, life is more like practice. And so if you look at it that way, there's less pressure. But at practice, you have to participate. You have to try. You have to put in the work. And if you walk into game day as an athlete and you're thinking about how you need to perform, you're not going to perform. Practice, the day-to-day, is where we live our life. People watching us day-to-day, they get to see how we practice. And the more we practice, the more examples we have, or they have, of how to live. So that's the way I try to look at my life, man. Like every day I get to practice. Now there are times when it's game day, when I'm on stage for a keynote, or when I'm in one of those pivotal moments with my daughter where I need to really show up for her. That's game day. But if I'm not practicing in between, I'm never going to perform during game day. So, yeah, man, like Floyd Mayweather, I remember listening to Floyd Mayweather. He was about to fight Manny Pacquiao. This is back in the day. Big fight. Everybody was anticipating it. And somebody went backstage and Floyd Mayweather was like super casual, just like whistling, real laid back, almost too calm. And they asked like, bro, aren't you nervous? Like, don't you have to get ready? And he literally just said to him, he said, if I have to get ready right now, I've already lost. So, his saying is you got to stay ready. Stay ready. You don't have to get ready. So that's the way I look at this thing. That's what I'd say. That's generally what I would say. Hey, if you don't know the 3 best ways to live life, I've failed you as a father,
Yeah, it's like that saying, like the more you sweat when there's a time of peace, the less you're going to bleed in war.
Yeah, man, I love that. I think another metaphor for people, because I think people like metaphors. Like imagine we're in a boat. We're in a boat, calm, seas are calm. We're having a good time. Music's playing, sun is out. Nobody knows where the life vests are. Clouds come in, seas get rough, waves start coming. Now you find yourself overboard. How much are you thinking about that life vest? But you don't know where it is. You had no idea because when times were good, you didn't think you needed it. You didn't at least see where it was. You didn't at least set yours aside. You didn't prepare for when the storm was going to come. And that's a metaphor I give my clients a lot. It is no. We're gonna prepare for the rainy, stormy days every single day. And then when that comes, that's game day, ultimately. Adversity is inevitable,
Yeah.
but there are a lot of adversities that are preventable. So preparation is key, man.
Yeah.
For sure.
Love that. Love that. So what's next for AMP? Let's say, in the next few years, in the next 5, 10 years, like what's your vision for AMP over the next few years? Are there any exciting projects, things you're working on for the next few years?
Yeah, I'm putting systems behind it. What I've really fallen in love with over the last few years are metrics, data. For example, blood work. All of my clients now on the front end of working with me get blood work. What's your blood pressure? What are your triglycerides like? Where's your testosterone at? Some of these markers are they're quantifiable. So in 3 months, 6 months, my clients' blood pressure problems are going away. Their testosterone levels naturally are increasing. But the more important thing is personal development, mindset work, all of that is very intangible and it's hard to quantify. It's a kind of a slow burn. It feels like that. So it's harder for guys to commit. So where the future of AMP is we're putting systems and processes in place, creating partnerships so that we can give quantifiable data to keep guys committed, motivated, and in the system because the system works. I've done it with hundreds of guys now. It gets results. Guys are overcoming massive limiting beliefs, dropping weight in the best shape of their life. Marriages are being restored. Some marriages are ending. Businesses are being started. Guys are making more money. They're just living bolder, and they have a playbook that helps them access the things that they want to access on a consistent basis. And so we're just going to keep growing this thing, man. And that's the plan.
Yeah.
Yep.
Amazing. So yeah, more quantifiable results through tracking systems, blood work, all of that. And are you planning on potentially hosting more workshops, seminars, keynotes? I know you hosted a few events in Tallinn actually recently. So are you planning on doing some of those in the next few months?
My interest has always been to partner with other people that are doing events, right? Yeah, events are going to be a part of the future. Most of the time, my clients want to get together socially, not so much for the education piece. So we're actually planning something in Dubai, and I actually got to talk to you about this, but we're planning on doing something in Dubai in the first quarter. And yeah, just getting around each other, interacting with each other. And man, it's easy to get isolated, doing these online businesses or whatever. And I think guys are ready to just kind of get out and travel to connect with each other in the community that I have. So that's part of the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're right about that. I think it's the best way to actually grow is to surround yourself with the right people and meeting them live because it's so much different. Like I've seen it. I went to Dubai a few months ago for a mastermind.
Yeah.
And it's so different to learn from them live and to meet them live, shake their hands in real life.
That's right.
Than just talk to them on a Zoom call. And it's so different. And
yeah.
the people, they're different, man. I mean, in a good way sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a bad way, but mainly in a good way usually. When you meet them in real life, the connection is much, much deeper and better. So yeah.